Boy, the draft lottery was a disaster for the Braves, but they still have 3 top 50 picks, and that's a big deal. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Wednesday, December 10th. Your source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app to get started today, but please do it responsibly. The draft lottery was on Tuesday night, and I don't know what I expected, right? Like, it's safe to argue that in the last 2 seasons, almost nothing has gone right for the Braves, especially in 2025. So Atlanta enters the draft lottery on Tuesday with the 6th best odds of the number 1 overall pick. And what happens? They finish 9th. It's absurd. They fall backwards. And it's really, the grand scheme of things, 6 to 9 from a money perspective isn't that huge of a deal. If you use last year's slot values, and I wrote up, golly, it had to be 1,400 words over at bravestoday.com, all about the draft lottery and what Atlanta's looking at now in slot values and all of that stuff. But if you look at the money, it's like $1 million different from pick 6 to pick 9, right? But when you combine pick number 9 with the prospect promotion incentive pick Atlanta got for Drake Baldwin winning Rookie of the Year at number 26, combined with their standard second round pick, which as of now is number 48. Some of those picks second round and later can change a little bit up and down as teams either A, lose their second highest pick for signing a qualifying offer player, or if certain teams receive a compensatory pick for having a qualifying offer player signed by somebody else. The Diamondbacks are a team where they can get a pick that would slot in before Atlanta's second round pick, not immediately before, but some spots before if Zach Gallen signs for more than $50 million somewhere else, right? So as of now, 9, 26, and 48. If you use last year's slot values, apply the adjustment that MLB increases them based on league revenues. I just assumed it was the same as last year's adjustment, 4.8%. You get a draft pool for the Braves of about $12.61 million from just the top 3 picks. And the reason that's a big deal is Atlanta's entire draft pool last year. So the slot value of all of their picks in the top 10 rounds added together, their entire draft pool last year was $9,081,100. Now you can go over that up by 5% without paying a major penalty, and a lot of teams do. But the entire draft pool last year was just over $9 million. Just Atlanta's top 3 picks this year are going to be over $12 million. Again, I did the math of 12.61, and it's a lot harder to do the math on the entire pool because you've got, one, the percentage you use for that adjustment matters more, and then you've got all the smaller stuff later. But I ballparked at around $16.25 million for the Braves. Like, it would have been one of the larger draft pools from last year, and it would easily be the largest draft pool the Braves have had in the draft slot era. Like, this is a massive pool for the Braves. If they get $16 million to add to the talent level in the minors. So I'm excited to see Ronit Shaw cook, and there's a couple different things the Braves can do with this that are really exciting. And before we get into actual players, it's important to point out that this happens every year. Every year, there's some team that has 3 picks in the top 50. And that's usually either because of a competitive balance pick, a compensatory pick, or a prospect promotion incentive pick. The competitive balance picks, this was in the collective bargaining agreement, these are the 10 lowest revenue clubs and the 10th smallest markets. It's either in round A or round B. Round A is between the first and second round. Round B is between the second and the third, and it rotates back and forth. So some teams, because they're in small markets or don't make a lot of money, get an extra draft pick after the first round or after the second round. And then the other type of additional pick, the compensatory pick, is if you have a qualifying offer player who leaves your team in free agency, then depending on your revenue sharing status, depending on how much that player signs for, you get a draft pick at a certain place in the draft. If you are a team that receives revenue sharing and that player signs for at least $50 million, your pick comes after the first round. If they sign for less than $50 million, it comes after competitive balance round B. If you pay into the CBT, right, you went over the luxury tax, your compensatory pick is after the 4th round. And if you're not receiving revenue sharing or a CBT paying team, yours is after the second competitive balance round. But you can get extra picks that way. And then the prospect promotion incentive. So every year of the last 4, there's been at least one team that's had multiple. The Arizona Diamondbacks, 2022, they had pick number 2, they had pick number 34, competitive balance pick, and then they had pick 43. They took Drew Jones, the son of Andrew Jones, at number 2 overall. They took a college pitcher at number 34, Landon Sims out of Mississippi State. And then they went with Ivan Melendez out of Texas, the first baseman, the Hispanic Titanic. He won the Dick Howser Award. He won the Golden Spikes Award. He was the National Player of the Year. They went with him at number 43. So it was 2 college players and 1 position player, or sorry, 2 college players and 1 prep player. And from a money perspective, they paid Drew Jones the exact number 2 overall pick slot value. They went slightly over for Landon Sims because he was injured, but he could have gone back to college. And then they actually got Ivan Melendez a little bit under slot because he was a college senior. They paid him $1.4 million. The value was like 1.8. They didn't have to pay him that much, but they did. Seattle Mariners in 2023, another situation where they had 3 picks. Part of the reason they had 3 was Julio Rodriguez won the first ever prospect promotion incentive pick for winning Rookie of the Year. That was pick number 29. So at 22, they picked Colt Emerson, prep shortstop. They went over slot to sign him. At pick 29, they took outfielder Johnny Farmelo, a prep outfielder. They went over slot to sign him. And then the very next pick, their competitive balance pick, round A, so pick 29 and pick 30, they took a prep outfielder and went under slot to sign him because he was expected to be middle to late of the second round. So they paid him more than he would have gotten in the second round, but it was under the slot value for the pick, which helped pay for the first 2 picks. They then went under slot with some other guys. They took a college senior in the second round and paid him less than half the slot value. That helped pay for the rest of it, right? They did go back and get another prep in the 4th round, Aiden Smith, and paid him like $1.2 million on a $500,000 slot value. 24, Arizona again. 29, 31. 31 was the Corbin Carroll Rookie of the Year pick. And then 35, competitive balance round A. They went all position players. They went prep outfielder. They went college outfielder. They went prep shortstop, right? So they went all position players, but similar situation. You had to do a little bit of overslotting to get your some of your prep guys. They went over slot slightly on the prep outfielder, early Slade Caldwell, slot value on the college outfielder, Ryan Waldschmidt from Kentucky. And then because J.D. Dix was projected to be in like the third, what was it, the late second, early third, they got him in the competitive balance round A and they underslotted him, and that's what they used to pay for some guys later, right? Standard thing. A lot of teams do this. 25, Baltimore had 4 picks in the top 50 because they had 2 back-to-back compensatory picks. And they acquired a competitive balance round A pick from the Rays. That's the only picks you can trade are competitive balance picks. Only ones you can trade. And they only go to the poor teams. So you think they would want to keep that pick because that's a cost-controlled player if it works out. But we've seen a couple of those teams trade them. Kansas City traded one of the Braves, right, in the Drew Waters deal. We've seen Baltimore acquire one, in this case from the Rays. We saw, I think it was Baltimore acquired one also from the Brewers. No, they gave one to the Brewers maybe in the Corbin Burns deal. Like, we've seen some of these teams use it. But anyway, Baltimore went 4 hitters with their 4 top 50 picks. 2 catchers, Ike Irish from Auburn, Caden Bodine from Coastal Carolina. Then they got a shortstop from Arkansas, Weewa Aloy, and then a prep outfielder. Like, a lot of the teams that have a lot of top 50 picks, they have 3 or 4 top 50 picks, they like to go with bats. Because the common assumption here, and Atlanta's kind of operated differently because we've talked about this before, Atlanta prioritizes arms in the draft like nobody. I have not updated for the 25 draft yet, but from 2019 through 2023, Atlanta not only spent the most draft pool of any team on pitchers, they were the only team to spend more than 60% of their draft pool on arms. Most teams will draft more pitchers than position players, but a lot of teams take all those extra pitchers on day 3, rounds 11 through 20, and they pay them relatively nothing. Atlanta's taking more pitchers like everybody else does, but Atlanta's paying draft bonuses for pitchers. So I'm curious to see, with Atlanta having 3 top 50 picks, and we see the trend of all of these teams who have a bunch of top 50 picks taking almost exclusively hitters with those top 50 picks. Again, I went through, 13 picks across 4 seasons. And the common thing here was all of these teams had 3 or more picks in the top 50. And of all of those, there was exactly 1 pitcher taken. And it was by Arizona. And he was hurt. He was an injured college pitcher. Everybody else was a position player. Let's talk about Atlanta's options on the board as of now at pick number 9, at pick number 26, at pick number 48. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Encase Cards with a special Christmas deal for you. If you're watching on YouTube, the promo code below, Braves Today, it says it's for 20% off. It's not for 20% off. From now until Christmas, it's 30% off, okay? Custom sports cards. You upload your source photo, you use the website's designer, you put in the holographic options, you can choose all kind of different formats for the holographic stuff on there. You put your text, your background, all that stuff. If you need help, they've got white glove service, designers, all of that to help you with it. But once you've looked at your proof, you like it, you want to go, you submit it, they print it on the high quality cardstock, they slab it, they ship it to you. Your kid, your best friend, your best man, your maid of honor, whoever can be on their own slabbed and framed sports card. Go to ncasecards.com, ncasccards.com. Promo code Braves Today, again, from now till Christmas, gets you 30% off your order. ncasecards.com, that's ncasccards.com, promo code Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby. I mentioned the end of that last segment, and I said it a couple times because we do everything in threes. Rule comedy. That most teams with multiple picks in the top 50 are loading up on bats. And so if you look at where Atlanta is in this class, the question's going to be, are they able to do something like that? Or with the way the board shakes out, will it be better for them to take some pitchers? And if you look prior to 2025, a lot of Atlanta's drafts are multiple arms early, with someone or sometimes multiple people being underslotted so that they can overslot some sort of super athletic prep player on day 2, right? And you can kind of go back and you can look in 25. Those of you who watched the show live or who watched the show on Sunday night after day 1, one of the guys I asked Atlanta to draft was prep lefty Briggs McKenzie. They took him in the 4th round. $588,900 slot value. They paid him $3 million. I think he got the biggest or second biggest bonus of the entire draft, and he was a 4th rounder. In 24, they went over slot twice in the middle rounds. Nick Montgomery in the 5th, Ethan Bagwell in the 6th. Montgomery was a catcher, Bagwell's a right-handed pitcher. In 23, they went over slot in the 4th for prep righty Garrett Bowman. If you remember, he's the big boy, like 6'8", and prep outfielder Isaiah Drake in the 5th. AJ Smith-Shawver was a prep over slot 5th round pick. Super athletic. He was a football star in high school. I believe it's the same high school as Bobby Witt. They went over slot to take him earlier in the draft. It's not just prepsters that get overslotted. That's the most common demographic. But it does happen other times as well. Drew Hackenberg. When we took Drew Hackenberg in 2023 in the 2nd round, we paid him, the slot value was like $1.37 million. He got like a $2 million signing bonus because he was a draft eligible sophomore. And so he had the ability to go back to college. And so Atlanta went over slot to sign Drew Hackenberg. So and I don't know if that pattern's going to keep up this year or not, right? It feels safe to assume they're going to want to grab a talented prep or draft eligible sophomore sometime later on day 2. We're not going to get that deep. I'm not going to go that far with it. But if you look at pick 9, the hard thing about pick 9 is, as of now, and this can totally change between now and the draft. Obviously, you get so much baseball left to play, so many showcases for the preps and all that stuff. But as of now, it's kind of seen that there is like a 4-person top tier. There's a quartet of shortstops that, depending on who you ask, are pretty much considered to be in some order the top 4 guys in the draft. Number 1, Rock Chowalski, UCLA. He is just head and shoulders the number 1 overall pick as of right now. The expectation is the White Sox, who won this, will take him, which, holy cow, means that we have the potential, like their infield in a couple years could be nuts. So they have Colson Montgomery, who slugged the heck out of the ball despite having, despite playing like half the season. Billy Carlson, Caleb Bonnemer, and Roque Chowalski all in the same infield. Like, they could have an amazing infield in like 4 years, right? But anyway, digress here. Chowalski is considered the head and shoulders number 1. After that, there's like 3 other shortstops that are kind of all some order 2, 3, 4, right? Justin LeBron out of Alabama, University of Alabama, the college guy. There's 2 prepsters, Grady Emerson out of Fort Worth Christian High School in Texas, and Jacob Lombard, the son of George Lombard, the guy who I wanted to be Atlanta's coach, out of Gulliver Prep, Florida. And being at pick number 9, Atlanta's probably, like, you would think Atlanta would not be lined up to get any of the top 4. The top tier in this draft is likely going to be gone. If it's a top 4, it's likely gone in the first 5 picks. That's what happens. The question is, how deep is tier 2? And being so far out from the draft, we don't even have a ton of consensus behind Chowalski as to who is the top of the draft. Baseball America, for instance, they put out a mock draft after the lottery, and they had Lombard falling to Atlanta at number 9. Part of that is the fact that they don't have him as a top 4 player. Going into his senior year, they have him at number 7. And with the way the board shakes out, they have him going there. Other options for Atlanta there, LSU outfielder Derek Curiel. A lot of Atlanta area sports fans are going to want the Braves to take Georgia Tech outfielder Drew Burress. So he's going to be a popular pick. Virginia has a really good defensive shortstop with great contact called Eric Becker. So like the University of Virginia, not State of Virginia. He's a college kid. Coastal Carolina has probably the second best pitcher in the draft, right behind Liam Peterson of Florida, named Cameron Flukie. I saw him pitch in person last year in Super Regionals against Auburn. There are some other preps. Carson Bolemon's a lefty out of South Carolina that has some good stuff. The Braves kind of would like a lot of what he does. Shortstop Tyler Spangler out of California. He's a Stanford commit. Sometimes hard to get those guys, but California shortstops seem to do well. You can play baseball year-round in California. So, like, most of the board at pick number 9 is gonna be position players. There will be a pitcher or two. And just about every year, we wonder, outside of like a Skins year, will there be a pitcher or maybe even 2 pitchers taken in the first 10 picks? If you use the Baseball America board right now, they have exactly 2 pitchers in their first 10 picks. If you use MLB Pipeline's board, they have a grand total of 3 pitchers in the top 10 picks. So if Atlanta wanted to grab an arm at 9, there's probably one there. But the overwhelming majority of the boards and, the guys there in the top 10 are almost always position players, right? If you go down to pick 26, Baseball America had Atlanta taking prep lefty Gio Rojas out of Florida, mid-90s, kind of a wicked-looking slider, ton of spin on it, has a decent changeup as well. I personally have been looking at Chris Rembert. He, second baseman, he led off for Auburn. He also led off for Team USA over the summer. Really high contact, good defense at second base, but good defense. Should be able to move quickly as a draft-eligible sophomore. Could be your eventual Ozzie Albies replacement. Coleman Borthwick's a two-way guy that should be there around the end of the first round. He's a righty. A lot of organizations want him as a pitcher, but the Braves maybe could go for him as a position player. The Braves have been really notable at going the opposite way of a lot of teams on the two-way guys. Austin Riley was seen as having more promise as a pitcher than a position player. Atlanta took him as a third baseman. Michael Harris was both a pitcher and an outfielder. Atlanta took him as a center fielder instead of a pitcher, or letting him do both. So we'll see what happens there. And then pick 48, it feels like a lot of mocks don't go this deep, right? But it feels like that's around the time where, outside of Van Lackey, who is Georgia Tech's catcher, probably the number 1 catcher on the board as of now, outside of him, that's a good spot to grab some of the other catchers. Carson Tenney out of Texas can catch and play first base. Prepster Will Bricks committed to Mississippi State. That's a good place to grab a catcher. And I know people are going to say, like, hey, you have Drake Baldwin. He just debuted. He's got 5 more years left. Most of these catchers are going to take 3 or 4 years before they even have a chance of being a major leaguer anyway. So you don't draft solely based on need. It's the best thing to do is take best player available. But in each of these situations, especially in that first pick, it feels like you're a lot more likely to find a position player than you are to find a pitcher. So as of now, not knowing how the board would change, not knowing how Ronit Shaw wants to attack this draft, my guess as of right now would be you probably see 2 bats and 1 arm here. I've seen a lot of good things about the prep class this year. Obviously, we've got a good ways to go to get there. We'll do more draft stuff as we get closer to the draft. I'm thinking about instituting a second show sometime, like maybe once or twice a week, covering minor league stuff, covering draft stuff, things like that. It probably would be in the afternoons, like a debut at like a 4 o'clock Eastern kind of thing. If that's something that you would be interested in when, in the spring, starting probably in like March or whatever, right? We need minor league baseball around to really talk about prospects a ton. If that's something you'd like, let me know. You can leave a comment down below if you're on YouTube, if you're listening on audio. I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball. Heck, you could tweet at me. You could email me, contact@bravestoday.com. And, honestly, I'd love to bring on some help with that, partner for something like that, right? If it's somebody who's a good writer, maybe they could help write some stuff for that over at Braves Today. If they're good on camera, maybe we could, they could be on the pod with me, or maybe both. So again, if that's something you'd be interested in, or you know somebody who would be good at that, who would be interested, let me know. Again, contact@bravestoday.com. You can, I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball, all that kind of stuff. In just a minute, we saw Kyle Schwarber re-sign with the Phillies, and that kind of got the market moving a little bit. So let's talk about some of the moves, some of the impacts from these transactions on Tuesday. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It feels like the Phillies got a boost from re-signing Kyle Schwarber. We're going to do that in just a minute. But they are now third in the World Series odds at plus 950. So they've kind of separated from the Mets a little bit. Other than that, the odds are Braves are still hanging out the top of that National League group. I'm not going to go into super deep detail here because we have a lot of time between now and the World Series. But if you want action on MLB, college basketball, pro basketball, NHL, NFL, all that kind of stuff, they do soccer. I don't know why you'd want that, but they do soccer, UFC, all that stuff. FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Just please do it responsibly. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsey Crosby. The big news from the winter meeting so far on Tuesday, outside of the draft lottery, is that Kyle Schwarber agreed to come back to the Philadelphia Phillies. He got a 5-year, $150 million deal from the Phillies. Now, he's already 33, so he's now signed through his age 38 season, making $30 million a year. And what is really kind of not odd, I guess, but kind of wild to me is if you look at the situation that Philly's in from a payroll perspective. I mentioned this, I think it was last week when we did that show about Braves versus Phillies and Mets, this is now the 5th player that is signed somewhat long-term. I guess Wheeler's not technically long-term. He has 2 more years left in the deal. But the 5th player making more than the Atlanta max of $22 million that signed long-term, right? Nola is making $24.5 million a year through 2030. Bryce Harper is making $27.5 million a deal through 2031. Trey Turner is making $27.3 million a year through 2033, which I think is his age 40 season. And then Schwarber's now making $30 million a year. I don't know what the deferrals are on that, but $30 million a year through 2030. And so the difference in Philly and Atlanta, right? Like they have these deals, okay? They have these big deals. And then outside that, some of the guaranteed money. Christopher Sanchez it was a 4-year, $22.5 million deal they inherited from the Marlins. There's club options on the end. Matt Strom has 1 year left, $7.5 million. Reliever Jose Alvarado has 1 year left at $9 million. They want to dump both Taijuan Walker, $18 million on his final year. Nick Castellanos, $20 million on his final year. They want to dump both those guys. Outside of that, that's it for guaranteed money. Everybody else they have is an arbitration, and they have like 1 or 2 players in pre-arb, right? Alec Boehm's going to make $10.3 million. Jesus Luzardo is going to make $10.4 roughly in arbitration. Johan Duran, 7.6. Bryson Stott, 5.8. Brandon Marsh, 4.5. But like, they have, in this case now, 5 highly paid stars. They're all making more than anybody on Atlanta's roster. And then they have a lot of arbitration guys, and it's one of the biggest payrolls in baseball. And from a depth perspective, they don't really have great depth because they're paying so much money to the stars at the top. And again, this deal for Schwarber now is $30 million a year until he's like 37, 38 years old. Now, he's already a DH, so odds are he's going to be able to age. He should be able to age okay. He's going to have a bat speed issue come up at some point in time. Every player does. The question is it 37? Is it 38? Is it 40? Does he hold that off later? Who knows? But like, you can't put Bryce Harper into the full-time DH role until the final year of Harper's deal, because Schwarber signed as a full-time DH to the year before that. You're going to have to figure out eventually, you're going to be paying $27 million a year for Trey Turner to play second base, because he signed to age 40. And like, when Braves fans, I've seen a lot of it this week. After the Monday show, the Sunday night press conference, I've seen a lot of it from Braves fans this week, complaining that the Braves are being cheap. I'm not here to defend the front office. Like, people think that that's not what I'm here to do, okay? I do my best to try to explain what I think they're doing and why they're doing it. That's my goal with this show. Explain what I think they're doing. Do I think it's a good idea? Do I think it's a bad idea? I said on Monday's show, I didn't think it was a great idea to count on all of those guys being healthy. I'd rather add one. I would have loved to have added the Dylan Cease. But similar to these things, Dylan Cease is paid in the upper 20s until he's like 38 years old. Part of the issue Atlanta has, I talked about this on a podcast on Sunday night with somebody else, is you have so many, when they're healthy, above average regulars across the diamond. Third base, first base, catcher, outfield spots, whatever. That it's hard to find free agents that you can fit into this roster that are, one, better than the guys you currently have when they're healthy and hitting. I know not everybody's been good the last couple of years, but both better than the guys you have, and you can fit them into this arbitrary box that you have drawn. This arbitrary box of, we don't want to pay you more than $22 million a year, and we don't want to pay for your decline years. Because the way that baseball's economic system is set up, you get drafted, it could take 4 or 5 years for you to debut. And then after you debut, it's 6 or 7 years, depending on if they manipulate your time or not, 6 or 7 years for you to actually play out your team control and go to free agency. A lot of free agents are 31, 32, 33 when they hit free agency. And so because of that, this is probably the only real shot they have at long-term security. And so the guys that are good enough to get more than $22 million a year are the same guys that are good enough that somebody will give them the 5 years they're asking for, or the 6 years they're asking for, or the 7 years they're asking for. And sometimes you have exceptions, right? Harper signed, for 13 years? But he debuted at like age 19 or something. Like, he was super young. Juan Soto was super young, right? Most of your free agents are 29, 30, 31, 32, 33 when they hit free agency the first time. And so Atlanta's in this box. Can you maybe overpay somebody above $22 million a year to take a shorter term deal? Yes. And I'd argue that there needs to be situations where Atlanta does that. Because something needs to change when it comes to free agent acquisition. Like, it's very clear that Atlanta's not really ever going to be in it for the top tier free agents, because they won't offer the combination of the dollars per year and the length to get these guys. They beat LA on the money for Freddie Freeman, they didn't do the extra year. And again, there was a report that came out on Tuesday that Dylan Cease instructed Scott Boras, make a deal with the Blue Jays. I want to go to Toronto. Make a deal with the Blue Jays. The agent works for the player. Even Scott Boras works for the player. So don't tell me that Atlanta decided they did not want Freddie Freeman. Because Freddie Freeman's agent works for Freddie Freeman. And if he wanted to be here, he would be here. And that's a quote from Chipper Jones. Anyway, I digress. So, Atlanta was never going to sign Schwarber. Because even if they were willing to come off at 22 years, or $22 million a year, they weren't going to pay for a player's age 33 through 37 seasons at that dollar figure. And you can very easily argue that something needs to change, and I think it needs to be that $22 million. The issue is, and I'm not defending their decision to cap at 22. I think that's been a problem. I think if they had fixed that, maybe with Dansby or whatever, that's been an issue in the past, and that stopped them from keeping talent or getting talent. But the issue is, everybody else in the clubhouse knows that no one's making over 22. And so the first guy that gets over 22 and actually signs it, they offered Nola reportedly more than 22. They offered Freeman more than 22. I don't think Jeff Hoffman was offered more than 22. Never. He was offered 5 years though, into his mid-30s, which was unusual for AA. Would have been the longest free agent deal AA signed with Atlanta. The current record, I think, is Marcell Ozuna's 4 for 80 or whatever. But the first time you go over $22 million, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. Because now you can't draw that line in the sand in negotiations and get a guy to accept 22 on an extension or whatever, right? They extended Strider. Strider's not going over 22. When they redid Sales Deal, they lowered his yearly salary to $22 million. Is Ronald the guy where they go over that? I talked about this with Chris Thomas 2 weeks ago, who, by the way, shout out Chris Thomas, #1 ratings in the Atlanta market on 92.9 The Game. Shout out to our buddy Chris Thomas for that. But when does it happen? It feels like we're at the point now. Edwin Diaz, the reliever, signed for $23 million a year with LA. It's a 3-year deal. He opted out of 362 left with the Mets, and he got 3 for 69 before deferrals with the Dodgers. So he made more money by opting out. But he signed for an annual salary of more than Atlanta's willing to pay anybody, or has successfully paid anybody on a multi-year deal. So at what point does that $22 million go up? I really don't know when it is, but it needs to happen sometime soon. Oh, on the Chris Sale note, Vaughn Grissom was traded from the Red Sox to the Angels, and the return was outfielder Isaiah Jackson. If you've not heard of him, that's fine. He was an 8th round pick this summer out of Arizona State by the Angels. He got in a handful of games in either rookie ball or single A. And now he gets moved. So the final trade, and the trade tree is not done, but the final trade as of right now is the Angels get Vaughn Grissom. The Red Sox get center fielder Isaiah Jackson. The Braves got Chris Sale, who won the 2024 Cy Young, while Boston paid his entire salary that year. So Atlanta won that deal. Craig Breslow is not going to put that on his highlight reel. But for everybody that says that AA got lucky in 21 and doesn't make any good deals or anything like that, I'd point you to this one and I'd say, hey, they dumped Chris Sale on the Braves. They paid for him to be here. He won you a Cy Young, and the only guy they got back in that deal, they just dumped for an 8th round outfielder from Arizona State. Thought that was interesting. I don't know if I mentioned it yesterday. Michael Soroka signed with the Diamondbacks. It's a 1-year deal. I talked to somebody who covers the Diamondbacks, Jack Summers, the host of Snakes Territory, they are going to use him as a starter. That is the plan. But they do know that they can drop him back to the bullpen if they need to. But they're going to use him as a starter. We saw Gregory Soto go to the Pirates. Steven Matz signed a 2-year deal with the Rays, which is kind of surprising. I honestly, we saw some stuff happen as soon as Schwarber signed. Diaz went ahead and went. And honestly, this winter, the thing I'm most surprised about is the relief market. I feel like we talked earlier in the offseason, or beginning of the offseason, about how there was a lot of relievers out there. And I kind of thought maybe this could end up messing with the Raisel Iglesias market and he would come back quickly, because there's a possibility of musical chairs and getting left out of the money and the guaranteed closing spot that you want. We've already seen Devin Williams sign. We've already seen Edwin Diaz now sign. We saw Helsley sign, Iglesias. A lot of these top-end reliever guys are already off the market. I think that's been the biggest surprise for me so far of the winter, is just how quickly the relievers are going. Because it feels like relievers typically are the final guys to get signed. A lot of them, it feels like, sign in January or even February as you're getting into getting ready to report for spring training and pitchers and catchers report in early February. It's earlier this year because of the World Baseball Classic. I believe Team USA's announced just about everybody who's a starter but first base. No confirmation, but I don't believe Matt Olson's going to be playing. I don't think that Team USA will have any Braves players on it. Ronald wants to play for Venezuela. A couple other guys. I think Daysbel Hernandez wants to play for Cuba. There should be a couple guys. Maybe Jerkson Profar is playing for the Netherlands. Anybody from Curacao plays for the Netherlands. I think there's a couple Braves who could be on it. World Baseball Classic Media Day was on Tuesday at the winter meetings. So some of these announcements came out. I haven't seen confirmed about Braves players playing in the World Baseball Classic, but as soon as I do, we'll definitely pass those along. In the meantime, do us a favor. If you're listening on audio, a 5-star review would be fantastic. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. And also, off-season. If there's something you want to hear about, let me know. contact@bravestoday.com. You can email me. We'll talk it out. If it's something good, we'll make it into a newsletter, a show, both, whatever it might be. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.